afternoon, or good morning, wherever you're joining us from today. Happy June 1st. Unbelievable that we are halfway through 2022. My name is Vanessa Ford. I use she, her pronouns, and I am thrilled to be joined by my collaborative partner, WF, to talk creating opportunities to develop persistence and purpose. This is a partner impact event with the University of West Florida. We also would be remiss if we didn't note that today is the first day of Pride Month. At Mentor Collective, we are eager to support all people, regardless of who they love, how they identify, or where they are from. And it seems that UWF is also tweeting out something similar this morning. I also just learned it's the start of hurricane season. So for all of those joining us in the southern states, I wish you well and safety. Just a few tips as we log in today. Please make sure your audio is on mute. You can have your camera on. We love seeing who's in the room, and adjust your video layout to speaker view so you can always see the person who's speaking. And why don't you go ahead and chat your name and school in the chat, introduce yourselves, connect with other colleagues. The reason we run these programs in a regular Zoom meeting is to allow for that connection. I can't always see the chat, but I will be checking it periodically, but feel free to engage with one another. Oh, and before I begin, yes, a recording and these slides will be available to all that registered and attended tomorrow. So you don't have to take copious notes. You can sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. What are we going to do in our hour together? We're going to give a little background on our time for Q&A. Please feel free to questions in the chat. My colleagues are watching for those questions and will be relaying those to me to answer at the end. We also encourage you to use your emojis. Sometimes it can be a lot to sit back and not feel like you're really interacting with anyone, but if anybody says anything that really resonates with you, feel free to use an emoji to share your thoughts and feelings about that statement. I am your host. I have been with Mentor Collective for approximately at this point, but I'm really excited to be working with Capstone at UWF because I was a teacher for 20 years as well. So to be working with the College of Education and Professional Studies is very near and dear to my heart. And I will be hosting and facilitating today's conversation. I now love our speakers from our UWF team to introduce themselves. Tell us about who you are, your role, and anything else that is of interest to share. Dean Crawley, would you like to start?
I would. You can hear me all right?
Sure can.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. My name is William Crawley. I've been serving as the Dean of the College of Education and Professional Studies at the University of West Florida here in Pensacola, Florida, right on the coast, since about 2014. So nearly 8 years now. My higher ed experience prior to joining the University of West Florida, I was an American Council on Education Fellow where I worked in the President's office for about a year and a half at DePaul University in Chicago. And prior to that, I was at Grand Valley State University for 12 years. That's up in West Michigan. So kind of a line straight north to south has been my career trajectory. And I'm pleased to be with all of you today. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for being here. Dr. Scott.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, great. I'm Diane Scott, and I'm the Associate Dean of our College of Education and Professional Studies, and I'm also a professor in social work here. I've been in the Dean's office since 2012, but I've been at the University of West Florida since 1999 in a number of different capacities, started as an adjunct and then came up through the ranks and now on the dark side in administration, but I also still teach. So I love the contact with students.
Always a teacher. You remain a teacher regardless of the roles you take on. That's what I found. Welcome. Dr. Kohler.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kohler, Eric Kohler. I am the Executive Director of Enrollment Management, Data and Student Success for the College of Education and Professional Studies at UWF. I've been in the role 3 months as of today, so it's new for me. But prior to that, I served as the Director of Advising for the college for 6 years. Before that, I spent about 6 years both at department level advising and with TRIO Student Support Services.
Great. This is our wonderful team who we get to collaborate with, I get to collaborate with, and you'll be hearing a lot more from them as we dig in today. Before we do that, I just wanted to highlight kind of why we're coming together to talk about running a mentorship program to start with. We know that running a mentorship program is extremely complicated. We need somebody who's invested in the work. You need to recruit mentors and mentees, train mentors, make relevant matches, have some kind of software to ensure that you can track engagement, a curriculum to support mentors, assessment, are we reaching the goals we want, and ultimately the budget, most often in human capital, to run a mentorship program. And so when we come together to partner with institutions, we really aim to take that lift off of the institution through 6 essentials and 3 main pillars. And we're going to dig into this a little bit later on, but just so you know, when we partner with folks, we're looking at program design, recruitment, training, matching, engagement support, and assessment. It's one thing to want to run a mentorship program. It's another to make matches. It's another to ensure that they're engaged. And it's finally another to ensure that we're having the outcomes and impact on student success that we want to have. And at Mentor Collective, we are also really grounded in 3 main buckets. The first is research. Everything we do is research-based, and we're going to dig into some of that research today. And actually, Dr. Kohler is an expert in this mentorship space and has published with Dean Crawley in this space as well, and you'll hear about that. We have services. I'm one member of a team of 4 who supports their program, and then the technology to support. We're not going to dig into the nitty-gritty of how it works today, but should you have questions, just put it in a chat and someone from Mentor Collective can reach out to you to further the conversation. So to find out more about who's in the room today, let's take a quick poll. It should launch any second. If it doesn't launch, we're going to chalk it up to technology, and I will ask you to put your answers in the chat. Our first technological glitch of June 2022. We were really curious when we met to talk. We wanted to know what mentorship looked like on your campuses. Do you have peer-to-peer mentorship? Faculty mentorship? Do you have mentorship through affinity-based groups, career mentorship, alumni mentorship? What does it look like on your campus? If you could put in the chat a little bit about what you have going on in your spaces, that will help us understand a little bit more about who's in the room. While I could talk forever, I am going to start turning it over to the fabulous team from UWF, really introducing this idea of first time in college, creating opportunities to develop persistence and purpose. And Dean Crawley, I'm going to turn it over to you to frame our conversation a bit, and then just tell me when to switch slides, and I'll push forward.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, well, thank you again, all of you, for allowing us to come together, and we'll share our mentoring journey with you and see if that will be helpful to you. In thinking about our journey, just reflecting on it, I think our mentoring story in the College of Education and Professional Studies really began in about 2015. And part of that was stimulated by something that happened in 2014. In 2014, the Florida State University system onboarded a performance-based funding model. That model was used across 12 state university system universities, which included UWF, where we're at. And that model assessed a number of performance metrics as a means to inform annual funding allocations. So that got everybody's attention in Florida. And UWF, we're a mid-sized comprehensive university in the middle of all those 12 big universities. And as many of my colleagues on this call from like institutions will know, comprehensive universities, we do a lot of things really well. We perform quite well on a number of metrics. One of those, or two of those, where we tend to be challenged are, one is academic progress rate, and that's a student's positive progress from their first year to their second year of college, and the four-year graduation rate. Those are two places where we always struggle a little bit as comprehensive universities, and we could use some help. So after reviewing the literature for insights regarding academic progress rate and graduation rate, and conducting focus groups with our own students, our thinking about the power of positive relationships in helping align and support student success, it really began to evolve. So to concern our need to respond to new performance metrics in the area of academic progress and graduation rates, we as a college set out on a course to build an infrastructure to really focus on first time in college students, or what you'll see as FTIC students throughout the presentation. Why don't you jump to the next slide for me, please? So here's a kind of an aggregated profile of the University of West Florida. We are just over 50 years old, and you can see we're just about 13,000 students. That's been quasi-stable for the last many years. We're just coming up on 100,000 alumni, and our age ranges are very vast, from 18 to 71 years old. So again, we're that typical university that started in the mid-60s and has advanced ourselves along a comprehensive mission. So to give you a little context, let's go to the next slide, and we'll show you the College of Education. There we go. So the University of West Florida is made up of 5 colleges. This college is the one that we're going to focus on today. It is the one that really has hosted Mentor Collective and this surrounding sports strategy we're going to talk about. So the college is organized into 1 school, 6 academic departments. It hosts 2 doctoral programs, and comprised of about 245 faculty and staff. And that includes adjunct instructors, a really important part of our team. All of that is in service to about 2,700 traditional students. About 40% of those are undergraduate, 60% grad. And we also have what I call auxiliary students, or they go through continuing education. There's about another 1,600 of them. So it's a complicated college. The college, you can see here, is about a 3-to-1 female to male ratio, and it's comprised of about 40% racial minority profile. That includes about 14% African American and 13% Hispanic students. And finally, what's not here is our pre-COVID, we were about 53% of our courses were online. Of course, during COVID, that went up to 100, and right now we've settled at about 66%. I don't know what that will look like going forward if we'll get back down to 53, but in general, we had about half of our courses were online and half were face-to-face. So again, a very complex profile. Next slide.
I think one of the things as we got started working together, you needed to unite stakeholders around some shared goals and challenges. Dr. Kohler, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I also want to speak a little bit more about the metrics, just because it helps understand who the stakeholders are, as well as some of the literature that we're going to share with you in a second. But one of the metrics that we have is % of bachelor's graduates enrolled or employed. So that means students that graduate with their bachelor's degree must continue their education or be employed making at least $25,000 within a year of graduation. We also have our 4-year graduation rate among first-time in college students, FTICs. Dean Crawley had talked about the academic progress rate for FTICs. More recently, they added the transfer student 2-year graduation rate. So that's for students who earn their associate's degree at another Florida institution who transfer to UWF. They must earn their bachelor's within 2 years. And then we also have the Pell recipient 6-year grad rate. So students who are receiving Pell grant need to graduate within 6 years. Those are FTICs as well. So the Board of Governors has used these metrics to really shape our system as we move forward, to their perspective, it looks great. Things are moving along well, but it's become challenging for the institutions. So these challenges have really inspired the institution, our colleges, our departments to explore different student support strategies. And in our case, we chose to engage in mentoring. To onboard the college-wide mentoring program, we first had to identify the many stakeholders and highlight our shared goals. And largely, our shared goals were meeting those metrics. Stakeholders include, but aren't limited to, students, of course, board of governors, faculty, and administration. We found it important to first support an understanding that teaching is different than mentoring, and we did this early on in the implementation process to get our stakeholders on board. Next slide.
Eric, can I add something about that? When you said with the last part about we were focusing on students for retention and getting them graduated and getting them jobs, we really messaged that in a way that, yes, it was about the metrics, but it was also about doing the right thing for students. And all, of course, we can all agree we want students to graduate. We want them to finish as quickly as we can. And so that was a big part of how we talked about this as well.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. All right. So what do we know? We know from Tinto's theory of departure that students are less likely to depart if they're academically and socially engaged. Also, Nora and Chris stated first-year support programs were critical in helping students achieve academic progress and persistence to graduation. This is why we invite students to participate their first semester in the Near Peer Mentor with Mentor Collective. Wells held that first-year programs enhance social engagement. Students are more likely to persist from first year to the second year when they participate in these programs. Again, this aligns with Tinto's theory of departure and social engagement. This also speaks to our APR metric that we mentioned earlier, first to second year. Rayleigh and Chung explain that cohort approach also benefits students by providing them a community beyond their families and friends. With that, these students experience less stress. We also know we serve a large number of first-generation students. And we also know that retention rates among first-generation students tends to be lower than the general student body. So knowing that we serve many first-generation college students, it really supported the rationale for our student support strategies using mentoring. So with all that, we got buy-in from students because it provided them a meaningful college experience. We got buy-in from administrators because we framed it with how it would impact our performance metrics. And we also got buy-in from faculty because they understood the difference between teaching and mentoring. And again, we did this early on. Next.
So Dr. Kohler mentioned, the research, and of course, like true academics, we jumped in with kind of 2 feet right away. We said we want to know what the research says we should focus on, but we also wanted to talk to our students. So we did a lot of internal focus groups with students, and we learned a lot from those explorations. So I'll just share a few things with you. First, we wanted to tease out, is there a distinct difference? And there is across generations. We know that the most recent cohort of college-going students has now advanced from millennials to Gen Zers. I have to keep up with this stuff. The way that's defined in the research that we looked at was millennials were born between 81 and 96, and Gen Zers were between 97 and 2012. And the review of the research really denoted that Gen Zers are the purpose-driven generation. It's a significantly higher percentage of them, actually 60%, than prior generations that self-report a desire to matter. So Gen Zers are about 60%. They say, we really want to matter. We really want to make an impact on the world. And those same set of questions come out to about 39% for prior generations. So that's a big jump. We started thinking about this, and this came out of our focus groups too. So we started thinking about this as a value expression. It began to serve as one of our guiding understandings in whatever we were going to develop going forward. So our challenge as a college really involved, how do we respond to that value expression with strategic communications and support strategies that could drive meaningful and fulfilling university experiences? So again, we turn to the literature and our experiences with our focus groups, and what they told us a few things. told us, and this isn't a surprise to anybody that's read George Koo's work on high impact practices. They wanted experiential learning opportunities. They wanted to be involved in a network of solution-oriented relationships. They wanted to be pragmatic in a sense. And they wanted that to include both mentors and peers. This is where we're starting to move towards this surround and support idea, because it wasn't just I want a mentor, it was a surrounding body of supports they wanted. They wanted to acquire skills to advance their career opportunities, and they wanted to be socially engaged. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about Gen Zers were, yes, they want to be invited to the party, and they need to be invited to the party, but they're much more likely to come if they're invited by multiple trusted allies. I heard that in so many different forms. It was really amazing. So to nurture that environment, the college really developed a multi-pronged mentoring model. So we wanted to make a promise. Each student would get a specified professional academic advisor. They'd get a specified purposeful faculty mentor, and they'd have an opportunity, if they wish, to engage with a near peer or an upper class mentor. So that's why we termed this a surround and support mentoring strategy. The model did not come about overnight, of course, and in fact, Dr. Scott will talk about it in a minute here, but we very purposely developed and implemented it across a 4-year time frame, and we added progressive layers of student support with each academic year. Next slide.
So the first prong for our model was professional academic advising. So we first revisited the college's academic advising model and decided to centralize the service. This move allowed advisors more opportunity to collaborate and grow within the academic advising discipline. Professional academic advisors are able to help students navigate curriculum requirements, understand policy and procedures. We can connect them with university resources and a lot more. So shortly after centralizing, to further incentivize professional academic advisors, we consulted the NACADA literature and developed a tiered career ladder that promotes both scholarship and leadership. This pushed advisors to challenge their current practices and to better their services. So for example, we started serving our online students using video advising sessions prior to COVID, before it was the norm. We started implementing that practice. We also met students where they were by implementing text messaging campaigns. So in support of scholarship, we used these experiences that the advisors had. We talked to the students and got feedback from them, and we took our experiences with video advising and text messaging and presented at regional and national conferences with NACADA. We also trained other advising offices on campus on best practices there, just to give back to the field. Next.
Before I jump into the next slide for you, Dr. Scott, we got a question that I want to clarify. From Monica, asked, first time in college, when the term first time in college is used, are we talking about first generation students or first admission students as opposed to transfers or associate degree students? If one of you could just clarify how we're defining FTICs.
Yep, first time in college are students that have just graduated high school and they came straight to the university in the fall. We designate them if they enroll in at least 12 credits full-time that first semester.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay.
Dr. Scott, you want to dig in and talk to us about some of the faculty mentorship you have?
Sure. So we'll need to move to the next slide, please.
I did, and it's not going. Let's see here. How about now?
No, mine's still showing the same.
Okay.
There it is. There it is. Okay. So
Perfect.
Another really critical piece of the leg of this model is this purposeful faculty mentorship. And many of our faculty, probably like you and on the call and like folks at your institution, really pride themselves on their relationship with students and the times that they get a chance to talk, whether it's directly after class or when students come, if they're in person, or even they ask to come into Zoom hours now, and they want to find out about the field and we tried very hard, as Dr. Kohler said, we stood up the Professional Advising Center first, and then really began to talk to faculty members about the mentorship piece as being very different from advising. And quite frankly, that we had some faculty members who were not very eager to give it up, because they thought if they gave up the advising piece that they would be giving up the mentorship piece, and that is not at all the case. And we've had to be very clear about who's doing what and how that's being done. And so again, emphasizing faculty relationships with students, but again, in terms of connections to the field, the career that they are going into, just opportunities that present themselves. We've also tried to make it where it builds on people's strengths. We've got some people who are out there all the time. They're at every orientation. They're the ones engaging and bringing in people. Then there's others who really mentor more, a smaller number of students. And so again, people were allowed to do it within their skill set and their strengths. But we've also done a lot of work to make sure that the engagement, and I'll talk about this going further, it's multi-pronged, but it's not just a one-time infusion that, okay, you've got a faculty mentor, and the faculty mentor may change over time as students develop relationships. But again, differentiating the roles and the specific duties that go along with this. And when faculty understood a little bit more of that, in many respects, they were relieved to not have to do the advising things, because they didn't have to keep up with changes in the catalog and catalog years and things like that. So they could focus really on the piece that they brought to the classroom, is the content expertise in their field. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, mine switched. Did everybody else switch?
Yep.
Okay, good deal. All right. So then once we got that on board, we brought in the near peer mentorship piece. And again, what we're trying to do is recruit students who are a little more experienced. So we're looking at upper division students, and they are recruited and trained to serve as peer mentors. They are helping provide their insights, their experiences. This happened to me. This is what I did. I talked to this person and they were very helpful. So really just providing some hands-on personal feedback to their mentees as issues come up and as discussions come up. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. The matching piece is very critical to this as well, because there's a lot of commonalities that are in place with the mentees and the mentors, but I'll talk about that a little bit further on. Both the mentors and the mentees learn more about the university, the culture. We mentioned the first time in college, again, often first generation in college students who may not know how to navigate the university culture and what it means and things that you have to do to be successful. And so they are very good at doing that on a one-on-one basis, and students are comfortable talking to their advisors, they're comfortable talking to their faculty advisors, but they're more comfortable talking to each other. And so, again, if they have a mentor who is in place who can provide very hands-on, like I said, this person helped me, if you go to this office, they're going to be able to help. Both the mentee and the mentors develop and grow from that experience. And we see that very plainly because as we've evolved the program, many of the students who were mentors or mentees when they began have come back and said, no, I want to do this and I want to be a mentor for a student. That was very valuable to me, and I want to pass that information along and help somebody else as they're navigating college. Okay, next slide. Okay, so, whoops, didn't go yet. There we go.
There it is. All right.
All right. Thank you. So again, here's the timeline. As Dean Crawley said, this has been a very layered approach. And so we talked about, we created the centralized advising first, and then Dr. Kohler mentioned that we developed the career path for our advisors, so there's an opportunity for advancement. Then in the following year, we started really talking to folks in both advising and faculty and throughout the college about what was different. We put it in work assignment letters so that people who were going to have that as part of their annual evaluation understood the importance of that. And they used to have, faculty used to have advising in their work assignment letters, but again, we changed the wording and changed the emphasis to be on the mentoring piece. And then in the fall of that year, after we'd really just kind of been rolling it out, we launched the Purposeful Mentor role. And so again, clearly valued it. We put a name on it and began talking about it very specifically. We also put it in position announcements when we were recruiting new faculty so that they would know that this is a priority for us as a department and as an institution. One of the most interesting things that happens, our college does an annual showcase, and we give awards to faculty that are for research, for scholarship, and research, for teaching, and for service. And we added a faculty mentoring award, and it is organized and selected by the College Student Leadership Council. And when we first did that, people are like, oh, ho-hum, yeah, now we've got a mentoring award. But as this has evolved, there are 10 times the number of nominations by students for this mentoring award than there are for the other level of faculty awards. And when we bring that out and roll that out, and tell people, it gets faculty members' attention that, oh, this is important. The students value it a lot. And we've also made a point of doing some honorable mentions so that whoever was the top mentee is noted, but we also say, here's the top 5, so that, again, people get valued, they get recognized for their mentoring as a faculty member. And again, that's continued to go. And then in summer of 2019 is when we began the actual partnership with Mentor Collective and launched the near peer student piece. So as you can see, there's been a timeline with this. Okay. Oh, and one of the other things that I just want to emphasize again from that previous slide, you don't have to go back, it's okay, is that a critical component of this was the faith that got generated by the Professional Advising Center, that because that stood up so well and was handled so well, there was a lot of trust garnered. And when we rolled out the other pieces of it, it was a natural fit on top of it. It really was seen as being helpful. And I credit Dr. Kohler with standing that up. That was really phenomenal in that the way that happened. And just as we did this over a period of years and put the layers on, as you can see, this is an example, and we have this on a big poster board framed piece right outside of our advising center. And we have one for the freshman year, sophomore, junior, senior years out there. But you can see in here that we've got Mentor Collective, we've got advising. It's not just a one-time dip and then we're done. The connect with the near peer, if you can see, happens before they go to their new student orientation. So that reach out from a fellow student is happening as they're coming into campus, or right after they got admitted, they're coming in the summer, whatever semester that's happening. They have already begun that communication. And we all know that those first few days are pretty scary. You come in and you're talking big and you're feeling big, but you don't want to mess it up because everybody's looking at you. And so again, that helps the folks feel a little bit more comfortable. Then they do the student orientation. Then again, immediately we've got the advising happening. We've got that professional advising happening. Then you can see after the first day of classes, that's when we have the faculty members reach out to their mentees. The departments do it differently. We have some that just for all their new admissions, they divide up alphabetically, and you have 20, you have 20, and that we've let them do that as they would like to. We have a stock letter that they can email to folks, but we've also said, if you'd rather just send an email to them and, I'm going to be in the cafeteria, why don't you come meet me at this table and we'll have coffee and we'll chat. So they can do it in whatever way that's comfortable. But we've got that early on, and then they roll through the semester. And the piece I want to emphasize is that connection with the near peer is happening all the way through this timeline. It is not just that beginning piece, that communication is happening. But again, you see, as it gets into spring semester or second semester, there's another meet with the faculty mentor happening. So another reach out there. If it hasn't been ongoing, people know that they're there, meeting with the advisors again. So this is really multi-pronged, but ongoing. And that's the important part. People need to feel that ongoing connection. All right. So next slide. I'm not sure if I think, Vanessa, you may be up, right?
Yeah. So, that you just teed this up great for us to dig in a little bit to the near peer piece, right? That is the first piece that students have before they even attend orientation. And Dean Crawley, I'm going to dig into a little bit of the challenge and how it works and the interactions. But might you just sum up why you came to Mentor Collective to collaborate with us? What were your reasons?
Well, when you're developing a new system, it comes with a lot of challenges, and some of those are foreseeable and some are just unforeseen. And so we knew we had to lay a foundation. We knew we had to layer it on, and we knew we could do some things. We knew we had good advisors and we could organize that differently. You heard about that. We knew that we had great faculty and we could build a spirit of student support and then explore how faculty engage with students. We can do that. But the next several steps were really beyond the college's capacity. And that's where we were really fortunate to partner with Mentor Collective. And that's the work you hear about: recruiting the students themselves, recruiting the mentors, onboarding them, training them, making sure they have the right skills, matching them. And Vanessa might talk more about this. I've been really impressed. I watch all the background that happens, and I've been really impressed with how mentors and mentees are matched. I have seen a lot of mentoring programs where it looks more like they're brokering them together. This is along variables of student interest and things that, quite honestly, we don't have in our student records that makes them builds affinity instantly between them. And I've had a lot of the students report back to me, and they self-report back. Did you know that this thing is also happening in this other person's life, or this is an experience that they had that I had? And I said, I did not know that. So that's been fantastic. So matching has been really, really important. And thereafter, supporting those mentors with resources. And then what's really important to us in many ways as administrators, especially when we're in this kind of performance-based environments, is it working? We have to be able to track it and assess it and go back. I have to go back and convince my bosses that this is a proper allocation of resources. And so there's some things we can do alone, but when we got to that last level, we really needed an external partner. We needed somebody that understood the spirit of what we were trying to do. And after working with Mentor Collective for a while, we're very convinced that's a good partnership.
Thank you for laying that all out. I don't think I'm going to dig into any more of these pieces, but yes, our aim is to collaborate with the partner so that we can take the onus of logistics off of the partner, and you all can focus on interventions, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, talking about what students need. So very broadly, how do we work? We work to recruit mentors, train those mentors in best practices for mentorship. We then recruit and engage mentees. Both mentors and mentees take a very comprehensive research-based survey that includes, as Dean Crawley was noting, things like life experiences, affinity groups, identities, career interests, hobbies. And we're able to make a connection and show the mentee and mentor, you've been matched because you share these things in common and you have almost an instant affinity. We then guide the relationship with, again, research-based guides from everything from interviewing skills to getting to know each other to talking about civic engagement and hard things in the news. And then we make sure that engagement is happening throughout. So how do we do that? We utilize a combination of email and text message support to encourage and remind mentors to log conversations, to share insights back to the university. I like to think of our work as an insight gathering. We are trying to gather insights about your students in ways that you may not have access to that can help inform decisions that are made at the university or college level. We measure interactions by frequency of text exchanged. The content is private. We can never see what's in that content. We also measure on conversations reported. Mentors are able to say, I had a conversation and we discussed X, and there are topics for them to choose from. And we have a dashboard by which Dr. Kohler, Dean Crawley, and Dean Scott can actually dig in and see what are the trends and conversations that are happening and what resources do we need to provide. We also have a flagging system. We know that mentors, especially peer mentors, can't be everything to a mentee, especially when it comes to mental health support, financial aid, housing insecurity, all of those things that really get in the way of ensuring a student can progress. And mentors have a way to flag that for the university, and we'll talk a little more about that. And then we do assessments. We try to ensure that students, mentees, and mentors are satisfied with the program. If they're not, what can we do to change it? And we have a series of assessments that look at self-efficacy and sense of belonging, pre, mid, and post. All of that together allows us to then look at leading indicators for retention. And you'll see towards the end of our presentation, those retention outcomes that we've seen within our mentored population over the last few years. We also work to design programs that have 5 main pieces. We identify who are we going to serve, when are we going to intervene with mentorship, what are our outcomes, who are our mentors, and how are they matched. And we have a team of individuals and a technological platform that helps make this possible. And this is the design that we devised and have worked towards together with UWF since 2019. So a lot of folks, I like to think of this as a collaboration versus just a vendor-partner relationship. And I'm curious if any of you could speak to how we've collaborated over the time to implement peer mentorship. What that looks like on your end.
Well, I can jump in. So our collaboration, well, we have my team and I meet with Mentor Collective every 2 weeks virtually just to discuss some updates, look at some trends, plan for future messaging, future recruitment, see how we can continue to keep the students engaged. So yeah, we do every 2 weeks, just a 30-minute quick check-in. Sometimes we have more to discuss than other times, but they're very useful.
Yeah, I find the dashboard really helpful. It helps us think about where we can improve and what information we can share. Part of this is strategic communications, and so what information can we share out to students, and where should that come from? It's just as important. And so sometimes working with Mentor Collective to share out information can be very important, not just to get the information to them, but they're actually more likely to read it if it comes from the right source. And secondly, the right information can help enhance the affinity of those relationships. And that's important. That's I think been a great partnership for us.
Yeah. And I love that we're referencing a dashboard, and I can't show you because of all the sensitive data on it, but our dashboard allows the team at the university to dig into what students are talking about, what flags have been raised, how often are folks having conversations, and then identify strategies to determine, oh, there's a subset of students who haven't logged any conversations. How do we engage them further? Or we have a subset of students who are really continuously talking about staying balanced. What resources could the advising team provide to those students based on their interactions with peer mentorship. And so it's been really great to collaborate. We've been able to get to know the UWF team and needs, and then we try to respond to that and take the lift off of the university so that they can focus on those next pieces. And so I wanted to dig in a little bit farther to some of the participation and trends that we've noticed, and then we'll get to the outcomes. We have opt-in rates for different populations of students. And I'm wondering, Dr. Kohler, if you want to speak to what we've noticed about who is opting in to your program.
Sure. Thanks, Vanessa. I've got a few observations to share with you. So students who identify as Black, Indigenous, people of color, Hispanic had a 40% opt-in rate in 2019, which grew to 43% in 2020. In the second year of the program, students in these groups accounted for more than 37% of all mentees, which is higher representation than either KEP's population or the UWF population as a whole. Of the students expressing interest, first-generation students were more likely to engage as both near peers and mentees than their non-first-generation counterparts. Across both cohorts, 95.9% of first-generation mentees who expressed interest went on to complete their pairing survey and were successfully matched with a near-peer mentor, whereas 79.7% of the non-first-generation mentees were matched. Likewise, across cohorts, 75.7% of first-generation near-peer mentors expressed interest, completed their survey, and were successfully matched with at least one mentee, where 61.6% of non-first-generation near-peers were matched. So mentorship programs can also be flexible and meaningful in supporting adult learners, adult students. 30% of the mentees in the 2019 cohort were 25 years or older. There's still room for improvement, which lies in the lower representation of students who identify as male. Opt-in rates for male students fell from 36% to 25% in the second year, but we still saw positive outcomes for the group in regards to retention. Next slide.
We'll dig into those retention numbers after. And so to kind of just look at our program overall, we've had about 340 students over the last 3 years. And the amount of time that it has taken UWF to work on this program is about 1 to 2 hours of staff time per month. We take on the majority of that lift. Our current opt-in rates is about 42%. One of the things that we are always working at is how can we increase this number? So we've been collaborating with Dr. Kohler and team to think about how do we align to orientation? How do we message? How do we align to when they are accepted? And we also have about 40% of folks who are engaging in substantive sustained mentorships as identified by 3 or more conversations. What our research has found, and we did a meta-analysis of conversation engagement by retention, was that folks, mentees who had 3 or more conversations with their mentor over the course of a 1-year partnership were more likely to persist than those who had fewer than 3 conversations. So we're constantly looking at that. You'll also notice that we've had about 1,200 conversations logged. I just want to note here that there are many more conversations than those that are logged. Many times students will start, they'll log all their conversations, and then they will transition to either in-person, social media conversations, email, Zoom, and they may not log their conversations. So it has to be an under metric, but we found still that thousands of the allows us to monitor that engagement in real time to see where we need to intervene and if we need to intervene to increase engagement.
Vanessa, I would also add that, one of the important ways to enhance matching is just to have faculty make students aware of it. Students listen to faculty. And so if they are up front of the class, first of all, if the faculty understand this is happening in the college and what its value is to the student success, and they're willing to talk about it or share how mentoring means something to them and what it means to them, then students are more likely to engage with that. Dr. Scott mentioned earlier, we provide kind of a generic letter to all faculty about the second week of each term, and they can modify it how they like, and they send it out to their mentors and say, here's who I am, I'm your mentor, here's what that means, come visit me. And we don't bean count, but faculty will tell us that their office visits, their phone calls and emails, there's an uptick for a couple of weeks following that letter. So students listen to faculty, and it's important that they're engaged in this process.
Absolutely. Dr. Cole, you handle a lot of our flags. I was wondering if you could speak to a little about how you handle those flags and what kind of insights they provide to you.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit about the process too. So the near-peer mentors can log into the Mentor Collective platform and submit an insight flag on students, on their mentees who might be struggling in something. And so those insight flags are then sent to a coordinator that we have in the advising office who will elevate it to the next level. Typically, what he'll do is he'll pass it on to the assigned academic advisor so they can work with the student. And this might mean we also have our own internal flag system at the university using Navigate. So we might turn it into one of our flags as well. But this could, if they're having financial issues, we'll connect them with financial aid. More serious issues, we might, case management, get them in touch with case management. Counseling services, student accessibility resources. Also, it might mean if they're having questions about their major and the work that they might get after graduation, we'll connect them with their purposeful faculty mentor. So these alerts are really useful in that it brings something to our attention so we can be more proactive and help these students. You'll see the majority of the flags issued on this chart here. Were about academic struggles, but they're also transferring schools, health issues, financial concerns, balancing work, family, and school, and anxiety. So there's several different topics that the mentors can choose from working with their students. Also interesting to notice on that chart is you'll see the flags started mid-late June, and the semester doesn't start till late August. So this actually gave us an opportunity to start addressing things prior to the semester even beginning.
Thoughts on conversation trends that you've seen as well?
Sure. So yeah, just to reiterate, conversations are more than just capturing how many text messages have taken place. The near peers must go into the platform and actually create a report, create a log of conversation. So it's a little bit more intentional there. But we saw a spike in conversations, again, like the alerts flags prior to the semester start. And we also just saw a gradual increase until midterms typically. So we see kind of a spike right before the semester. They keep going until midterms. And so what's nice about that is when we start to see it decline, we can have a conversation with Mentor Collective and see how we can get students engaged again. Initially, you see them spending more time getting to know each other in the summer, but the large majority of conversations here were centered on academics.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of time, and we want to dig into the outcomes that we have seen. You have each touched on, as we've gone forward, the dashboard and data and how it's informed your decisions and how you use that information. So I'm going to move us ahead a little bit here so we can get to the outcomes. And I was wondering, Dr. Scott, if you could start us off with a little bit of student voice, and then we'll get into the retention data that we've seen.
Yes, this slide is a prime example of, again, the students learn better from each other. Again, as I said earlier, they'll talk to their advisor, they'll talk to their faculty member, but they also can say things differently to a fellow student, and they do. And so, again, here's somebody who was concerned because they were struggling with their overall well-being, pandemic-wise, as most of us were. And then here, the mentor gave some examples of what they were doing. And again, real-time, generationally connected, interest connected, they're matched. And so a lot of validity to the advice that was given. The other piece that I wanted to talk about, we talk about people feeling included when they come to an institution. And then we're doing a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. But I think that the second comment talks about I'm not just included. I feel like I belong, and because I had somebody who reached out to me, made me feel a part of things, and improved the overall experience. And again, that's not something that you can do with a one-time connection. That has to take the ongoing communication that happens. And one of the things that we've learned through talking with y'all is that many of these relationships start out on the Mentor Collective platform, and then they evolve into, here, let me just give you my text, and they're texting like students do on their own personal devices outside of the system. But we also get information about that as well. Okay, do you want to move to the next one, or do we have time?
Here we go. Yep.
Okay, and we've touched some on the retention rates, and again, you heard that was one of the things we were looking at from the beginning with our metrics, and what are we doing with that? But you can see that there's a difference between the students who are mentored from the first slide is from the first year to the second year, and then the bottom one is from the first year to the end of the second year. And so it has an impact. They're staying involved. But again, we know the usage for the students who are being mentored is in our higher risk population or less connected population. So the numbers look different, but the non-mentored students are frequently students who have personal resources, families who have been in college who are guiding them through the process, whereas many of our students who are participating in the peer-to-peer mentoring don't have those supports. So again, this is another level of support and a wraparound for us. All right, and then do you want to move to the next one?
I'm sorry it's delayed. It should be popping up anytime soon.
Okay, and I think that Dr. Kohler actually covered most of this when he was talking about some of the statistics. So we might be able to move past this since we're short on time.
Yeah, sure. And we'll be sending this out as well. I think one of the takeaways here is that we were seeing certain populations of students with a higher impact, and those are students who traditionally may need additional support.
Exactly. And
so, right. And so I guess the question that I want to ask now is, what next? How do you plan to advance in this model? And is there anything you want your peers to know about the work that you're doing to leave with them?
For us, I'd say, to sustain and continue to advance our goals for our model, we have to really remain attentive to the needs of each of the roles in the model and understand where they're at on their individual journey. So, for example, really quickly, our advisors, they're excellent at advising. We'll probably start thinking a lot about student success coaching strategies. Some of it we already do, some of it we'll add. Faculty, we need to continue to make sure that we are working with them to position mentoring to be valued. So it's in their annual assessments, it's in their position descriptions, it's in the bylaws. Not all faculty have to be mentors, but it's really important. So it has to be valued for those that do it. And then, of course, for near peers, this is a group that's not static. This is what's most important about this group. They're new every year. And so we constantly are having to think about onboarding, matching, training, follow-up, assessment, and so forth. And then again, that's why the significant time and resource commitment it takes is important to consider. And again, that's why our college partner with Mentor Collective, and that partnership has been really opportune. And in my estimation, it's been a really good success for us.
Thank you so much. And I know there were a lot of questions that folks had. I would just encourage you to please reach out to us. If you are interested in learning more about mentorship at your institution, please raise your hand, send an email. I'm just Vanessa@mentorcollective.org. And we would be happy to reach out to you and talk a little bit more about what this could look like at your institution. I'd also like to quickly note that we have a roundtable coming up looking at peer mentorship in the admissions process, and we encourage folks to join us for that as well. And I just want to finally just make sure that everybody has Dean Crawley, Dr. Scott, and Dr. Kohler's contact information. The research that you saw noted was published by this team, and they are more than happy to discuss, share. And I saw a number of questions around the descriptions around faculty mentorship as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them. And I just want to say thank you to our UWF KEPS team for your amazing partnership, to all of you who joined us today for this lunch hour conversation, and for being dedicated to the success of students and all students at your institutions. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry we couldn't get to questions, but shoot us an email and we'll get them to you. And have a wonderful, wonderful start of the second half of the year.